Hello everyone, good morning. Please make yourselves comfortable. We'll be starting shortly. Get yourselves some tea and coffee and make sure that you're registered. We'll be beginning in the next 5 minutes. I see a lot of you sitting at the back of the room, so I'd request all of you to move in front and occupy the unoccupied seats that are right in front. Please, everyone, occupy the front rows. We'd love for people sitting in the back to move forward. Thank you. We see so many beautiful pictures getting clicked all across the venue. So if you do decide to post them, don't hesitate to tag us on #NextGenDecides. We'd love to feature you on our social media channels. And you can also follow us on our future agenda and at CEEW. Thank you. I request people to please start moving in from the pre-function area to the ballroom. We're going to be beginning shortly. Please take your seats. Thank you. Hi everyone, we're beginning in just 1 minute, so please take your seats. I request all of the people seated at the back seats to move in front. I request all of you to occupy the seats in front. I see a lot of our fellows. I see young people. I request you to sit in the front. Thank you so much. A warm welcome to our distinguished guests, respected speakers, and wonderful audience. On behalf of the Council on Energy, Environment, and Water and the United Nations Foundation, I welcome you to the Youth Sabha 2047, Shaping India's Future. I am Anushka Sinha. Thank you. I am Anushka Sinha. I am a Next Generation India Fellow for Gender Equality, and I'm delighted to be your MC for today. Today's Sabha is a part of a series of national town halls that are happening all across the world, supported by the United Nations Foundation's Unlock the Future Coalition. These town halls bring together stakeholders to deepen national leadership, amplify intergenerational cooperation, foster a legacy of sustainability, and empower diverse voices. I extend my gratitude to our key speakers for today, Mr. Shombi Sharp, the United Nations Resident Coordinator, Dr. Shamika Ravi, member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, Government of India, Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma, former Indian cosmonaut, and Ms. Dia Mirza, UN Secretary General's SDG advocate, Ms. Richa Gupta, United Nations Young Leader for the SDGs. Thank you and a warm welcome to all of you. To set the stage for today's dialogue, insights gathered during this town hall will also directly input into the Road to 2100, an intergenerational vision for the future beyond the 2030 agenda. This would be presented to world leaders at the SDG Summit in 2027. My peers and fellows at the Next Generation India Fellowship will share more about this vision and the big picture in a later segment. To set the stage for today's dialogue, I call upon Dr. Arunabha Ghosh, CEO of Council on Energy, Environment and Water, to deliver the welcome address. Dr. Ghosh has been a leading force in shaping public policy and sustainable development growth, as well as energy transition in India and across the world. His commitment to empowering and shaping the next generation is reflected in his work fostering innovative solutions that will impact the youth today and for generations to come. Please join me in welcoming our driving force at CEEW, Dr. Anurabha Ghosh. Thank you so much.
Will there be a global crisis if I shut this down? Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning. And thanks for that kind welcome. One thing you will notice is that I am not a member of the youth anymore. So I will keep my comments very brief, except to warmly welcome you on a rainy Delhi morning. Thanks for making it through the traffic and the floods to inspire us. Now, why are we gathered here today? Of course, today is International Youth Day, but we are gathered here for building bridges. Building bridges between the past and the present, between the present and the future, but also building bridges across geographies, across the ways in which our dreams, our aspirations, our hopes, and our challenges, our frustrations, our cynicism, all come together. This is not the script that was given to me. But yesterday, CEEW celebrated its 14th anniversary, And in my letter to, thank you. In my letter to our colleagues, I said, the reason we should exist is simply because we are here. We belong. We're part of the global south. We're 6 billion people. In India alone, the youth are more than half the population. That's more than the population of the United States and the European Union combined. So the Next Generation India Fellowship is a collaboration between the UN Foundation and the Council on Energy, Environment and Water to bring together a group of dynamic young people who can put their heads together but also consult with hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of other youth to think about the future they want to plan. I was a college student when India turned 50 years old as an independent country. I guess most of us, perhaps all of us, weren't around when independent India was born, but perhaps most of us will be around when independent India becomes a 100-year-old country. So what is that bridge between 2024 and 2047 that we want to build? What is the bridge between 2024 and 2027, the SDG summit? What is the future beyond the SDGs? What is it that we are trying to create? What is it that we are trying to disrupt? Some of you might have noticed that beautiful artwork made by one of our fellows, Gurjeet, outside. If you haven't had a chance to interact with him, go and see how he's brought together the tapestries that he's collected from across the country for the last 5 years and overlaid it in a way that how the earth would look if you took a snapshot from outer space. And then he's overlaid it further with our vision of the future. On your tables, you will also see a draft copy for consultation of a sort of dictionary of the future that our fellows are bringing together. It's India in future tense. What is the language that we're going to use? What are the words that will define us? How do we convey, again, the celebrations and the frustrations as the youth, as we look forward into the world that we want to build? Not just the India we want to build, but the bridges that India will build with the rest of the world. This is why we are gathered here today. Through the afternoon, you'll all get into consultation mode. This event is being live streamed. There will be further discussions and town halls in the coming months. And these ideas will be presented at various fora, whether it is the Summit of the Future next month in New York or elsewhere. But I simply want to end by saying, please engage, please reflect, please think about the agency that we all have to create what it is that we want. In 14 years, CEEW has managed to maintain a median age of under 30. So even though I am much older than that now, I like to believe I'm part of the youth. Not because I'm young, but I'm surrounded by the energy of the youth. So let us be young in energy, young in curiosity, young in envisioning a future that we all want to build together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ghosh. Let's give a huge round of applause again. I strongly echo the statements that Dr. Ghosh said. Even though we weren't at the birth of the nation, we still will be a very instrumental part when the nation turns 100 years old. So let's be young in energy, young in curiosity, and continue bringing about tangible change for our nation and the world. On the screen, you will see the QR code for the review process of the consultation copy of the dictionary as announced by Dr. Ghosh. Consultation copies are placed on the registration desks for your review during lunch. So our next segment features Dhruvak Agarwal, who is the Affordable and Clean Energy Fellow, and Ruchira Goyal, who is our Future of Food Fellow. Both Dhruvak and Ruchira are champions of youth-led innovation. Dhruvak's work in clean energy aims to build a modernized, reliable, and sustainable electricity system, and Ruchira's focus is on the future of food, which seeks to address global challenges, ensuring that our youth will inherit a world where food systems deliver nutrition, livelihoods, and environmental security. Together, we will share a high-level overview on the vision and ambitious roadmap for the fellowship.
Thank you, Anushka. So when I started as a public policy researcher in 2016, and I'm sure it's the case and was the case with a lot of you here, I was the youngest person in most rooms, on both sides of the table, the one advising and the one receiving the advice. The signal that I always got was that without long years of sector experience, you are not qualified to discuss policy solutions. For a few years, I believed that. And yet, I saw that young people like me are keen to contribute to policy making based on their lived experiences, their lived realities. All they need is support and a platform. Over half of India today is under 30. India today stands at the cusp of a new era, a moment brimming with promise, innovation, and boundless potential. Imagine a world where young people are at the forefront of shaping our country's future and solving the world's most pressing challenges. We are here to build that world together. It is my honor to welcome you to the Youth Sabha 2047. I'm Dhruvak, and I'm the Next Generation India Fellow for Affordable and Clean Energy.
And I'm Ruchira. I'm the Next Generation India Fellow for the Future of Food. More than half of all people alive today are younger than 30. Before the end of this century, roughly 10 billion more people are expected to be born. The numbers are clear. The rest of the century belongs to young people and future generations. And yet, too often, those who will have to live with the consequences of the decisions made today are excluded from the halls of power. It doesn't have to be this way. Acting on this sentiment, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, called upon young people to shape his vision for the future of global cooperation, our common agenda. Propelled by this vision, the United Nations Foundation launched the Next Generation Fellows Program in 2021. Building on the success of the first global cohort, when the time came to launch this program for the very first time in a young country, India was chosen. The UN Foundation and the Council on Energy, Environment and Water came together to launch the Next Generation India Fellowship Initiative.
So why India? Because what India does matters for the world. I was just reading the newspaper earlier today, and they were reporting that on this day in 1974, 50 years ago, the government of India was reporting that we had imported 6 million tons of grain from the Soviet Union and a bunch of other countries to supplement our public distribution system. Fast forward to today, where India's digital governance model, built on the India stack, has contributed to lifting nearly 800 million people, nearly 80 crore people, out of poverty, including by giving them free grain. In a double leapfrog in the energy transition, India has led the deployment of clean energy while electrifying an unprecedented 29 million households, nearly 3 crore households. India's endeavors into space have caught the world's attention. Today, 1 in every 5 young people in the world is Indian. Of the 10 billion people yet to be born this century, 1.4 billion will call India home. The voices of these young and future Indians is essential to creating a sustainable and equitable future for all.
11 fellows, 10 cities, 6 states. The Next Generation India Fellows are as diverse as the country we represent. Together, we aim to lead the charge in realizing a bold vision of youth-led nation building, creating a roadmap for young Indians to unlock the change maker within each of them. We are fortunate to have visionary advocates guiding our journey as Next Generation India advisors. India's G20 Sherpa, Shri Amitabh Kant, Ambassadors Andre Delago and Ruchi Ghanshyam, Ms. Aditi Arora and Ms. Purva Mishra form a powerhouse team advocating for our vision, offering intergenerational advice and championing our work. We thank them for their continued support and we look forward to keeping on learning from their rich experiences. So, Dhruva, long story short, what are we trying to do?
So we are collaborating with young leaders and change makers from across the country to turbocharge the leadership of young countries.
And how do we plan on getting there?
So step one has been to ensure that we hear youth voices deeply and represent them impactfully. So far, we have spent over 100 hours honing our research, collaboration, advocacy, and leadership skills. In step two, we launched the Engine Room for the Future, a digital intergenerational platform led by young people to reimagine how the UN thinks, plans, and acts for the future. The Engine Room reaches over 1 lakh young people across the world. It is led by 5 action groups comprising 51 change makers, 44 of whom, about 86%, are from the Global South. Together, we are building the learning agenda for the post-2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, the road to 2100.
And step 3 is now. We want to hear from your experiences, your challenges, and harness your incredible energy, creativity, and passion to start building a youth-led roadmap to the future. We also want to hear where you see the early signs of the future. Like Arunabha said, we have compiled a list of emerging areas and concepts that we feel will be important for the future in this dictionary for the future called India in Future Tense. We welcome your feedback and input on this dictionary.
So far, we have also had the privilege and the opportunity to act as a bridge between the voices of young Indians and national and global leaders. Our fellows Prachi, Anushka, and Nandini had represented us at the UN's Economic and Social Council's Youth Forum earlier this year. Later this month, Prachi will also be at the Brazil's Intergenerational National Town Hall, and Gundrag will represent us at the Asia-Pacific Regional Convening in Malaysia. Ruchira, Avais, and I will take what we hear from you today to the Summit of the Future next month. The summit is one of the most important moments for fixing and future-proofing global governance. Along the way, we hope to have gleaned original and unique insights on what young Indians feel about their future, about the world's future, and about India's future. And as policy professionals, as entrepreneurs, and as climate advocates and gender advocates, we hope to have built a community of young thinkers and doers, people who are predicting the future by actively shaping it.
So you can consider this town hall as our official introduction. To policymakers and leaders, we say, when you're looking for constructive youth engagement, turn to us. To young Indians, we say, when you're looking to be heard by leaders and decision makers, you can turn to us. With this town hall, the vision of the Next Generation India program now belongs to all of us. We are excited to chart India's next steps that will leave a footprint on the world. Let's embark on this journey to build the future of our country together.
Thank you so much, Ruchira and Dhruwak, for introducing what the fellowship is all about. And so if you think of visionary young Indians, think of the Next Generation India Fellows and the fellowship. As India approaches its centenary in 2047, the vision of the nation for a developed future with Viksit Bharat is both bold and inspiring. From economic prosperity and social advancement to environmental sustainability, and India's path forward is very ambitious. To share more on this transformative journey, we are honored to present a very special message from India's G20 Sherpa and Next Generation India Advisor, Shri Amitabh Kant.
Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to deliver this message to the young people gathered today for the Youth Sabha. It is heartening to be a part of an event dedicated to nurturing young people's ideas and voices. I congratulate the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, CEEW, and the United Nations Foundation for hosting this intergenerational town hall as a part of their partnership on the Next Generation India Fellows Initiative. And I'm particularly delighted to join this gathering as an advisor to the program. 50% of India's population is below 25 years, and I'm a firm believer in investing in young people. They are curious, bold, innovative, and bring tremendous energy to the table. With their entrepreneurial spirit and potential for leadership, they will play a key role in solving not just India's, but the world's most complex challenges. That is why India's G20 presidency took important steps to encourage youth participation on the global stage, with 14 youth 20 consultations and over 100 youth brainstorming sessions held across our country. It is commendable to see CEEW and the UN Foundation for taking the journey forward and bringing together a group of dynamic 11 young leaders in creating a platform like the Next Generation India Fellowship. The fellows are already creating strides in innovative thinking. India in Future Tense is a first of its kind dictionary crafted by the youth. It compiles 47 words representing important emerging focus area for India's future as it accelerates its journey to become a developed nation by 2047, contributing to the Viksit Bharat vision. It is inspiring to see the youth taking proactive measures to respond to the potential realities of India at 100 and the world around it. Like all of you, I look forward to reading it, and I'm sure that young people in the audience will feel inspired to consciously think, plan, and act for the future of our planet. I congratulate the fellows for putting this together, and I look forward to the robust conversation on India's future that kickstarts, including the fireside chats, the discussions that you'll have today. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no doubt that what India does impacts the world. Every sixth person in the world today is in India. India's incredible story is a part of every major conversation that is happening around the world. From artificial intelligence and technological advancements to major developments in space, from green transitions to being a global growth engine. India stands on the brink of an AI revolution poised to contribute $967 billion to the economy by 2035. With a robust strategy focusing on public-private partnership, comprehensive AI education, and a strong data infrastructure, we can lead the global AI supply chain, create jobs, and ensure inclusive growth. India is a leader in building robust digital public infrastructure. In a single decade, we have provided over 550 million Indians access to bank accounts using a DPI approach, with 55% of them being women and 66% residing in rural areas. India's DPI journey has achieved what would have taken 50 years without DPI. Together, we need to propel India forward. Consider the startup landscape of over 98,000 plus startups, 108 plus unicorns. Vast opportunities exist in areas such as AI, ML, big data, the energy transition, circular economy, EVs, quantum computing, genomics, 3D printing, robotics, drones, and space, amongst many others, while at the same time ensuring the highest standards of governance. Young people in the audience, you embody this narrative more vividly than any of these statistics can capture, and have the ingenuity and the drive to capitalize on the opportunities that a rapidly transforming India offers to its own citizens and to the world. Several Next Generation India Fellows are leveraging the country's growing momentum, exemplifying the dynamism and innovation that characterizes modern India's story. Consider 26-year-old Awais, an innovation fellow who co-founded Pixel, a company at the forefront of building hyperspectral imaging satellites. This initiative reflects a transformative shift in India's technological landscape, where young leaders like Awais are not only participating in, but also spearheading advancement in space technology. The emergence of this youth-driven leadership underscores the nation's shift towards becoming a global innovation hub, driven by a new generation that is not afraid to take bold initiatives. Such stories of innovation and entrepreneurship demonstrate that the India story is not just about economic growth or demographic statistics. It is about a vibrant, youthful energy that is reshaping industries, pushing boundaries, and redefining India's role on the global stage. We are almost on the eve of our 77th Independence Day. While you were not there at the nation's birth, most of you will be there when it turns 100. You have the opportunity to write this India story for yourself and future generations. I'm sorry I could not join all of you in person today, but I'm sure that this is a first in a series of many brilliant events the Next Generation India Fellows will host, and that we will have the opportunity to connect in spaces that are increasingly being designed for young people. I hope that you all continue to engage and learn in meaningful spaces like the Youth Sabha, and that this experience encourages you to embrace the leader within you and consciously contribute to the India story. You are the greatest ambassadors of this nation, and we hope to continue building a country that we are all proud of, together as equal partners. Thank you very much.
That was truly inspiring, and I'm sure you all agree to that. I was particularly moved by Shri Amitabh Kant's emphasis on the role of India's youth. Again, reiterating the fact that we may not have been there at the nation's birth, but we will be there when it turns 100. We have an incredible opportunity to shape India's future, crafting the story for ourselves and generations to come. It's both a responsibility and an honor to help steer our country's trajectory in this way. Thank you so much for your inspiring words, sir. As we turn to the next segment, we have a very inspiring address to energize and encourage the audience towards renewed commitment to shaping a better future through sustained and continuous engagements and investments in the Sustainable Development Goals. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Dia Mirza, an award-winning Indian actor, producer, eco-investor, and a UN Secretary General's advocate for SDGs and an inspiration to so many young people around the world.
Good morning. Namaste. Let me just plant this here. It's a very important accessory. It's made red carpets, this one. I want to start by thanking the CEEW and the United Nations Foundation for inviting me here today, and also by saying a very big thank you to all the fellows I've already heard. Thank you for your inspiration. Every time I hear you speak, I'm reminded that this is what defines my hope. And you, your voice, your activism, and most importantly, your empathy is what gives me so much strength every day. So thank you to all the fellows in this room. Thank you for being the champions that you are and just being so incredible. Thank you, Anushka, for that warm introduction and for being so wonderful right from the start. I have some notes written here because I find these opportunities to be possibly more daunting than performing in a motion picture, because I am surrounded by bright and brilliant minds here today who are in this room and of course who are watching us on a live stream. And it's so important that I effectively convey to you, each of you, why what you do and what I am trying to do is so important. Let me start by acknowledging something that is very often related to actors. You know, we are viewed as or perceived as individuals who tend to live in a bubble. People who live such incubated lives because we are protected from, the crowds, from the people. We are, escorted by security. We don't get the opportunity to truly engage with reality and life. That's the perception. And while some of it is true, I think it's very important to recognize that many of us today are recognizing the importance of setting ourselves free from those bubbles of oblivion and truly engaging with reality. And this has been made possible because of course, the extent of reach that social media has provided in delivering some extremely important messages to people, no matter how separated or disconnected they may be from the functions of the real world and the challenges of the real world. But I think there's one thing that we can all agree on, that the triple planetary crisis of climate change, of biodiversity loss, of pollution are not some abstract terms that we are dealing with anymore. They're not some idea that something is going to happen in the future and we don't feel the impacts of it in our everyday lives. So whether we're living in urban centers, and whether it's the capital Delhi or it's in Mumbai, which is not just the economic capital but possibly also the capital of storytelling in India, we are experiencing extremely polluted air that impacts the health of our young children, our babies, our elderly at home. We are witnessing and literally wading through the floodings that happen regularly in these places. At Delhi just experienced flooding. And the tangible reality of these big shifts that are happening, and of course we all know that the pandemic could have possibly been created because of biodiversity loss and the various scientific warnings we've been receiving from advocates of wildlife protection and forest protection to say that with this kind of significant biodiversity loss, there are going to be pathogens that are going to get released. There are going to be all kinds of severe diseases that are going to bring the world into the brink of complete collapse that we experienced during the pandemic. And this is not the first or the last, that there will be several more. At least these are the warnings of scientists. Now, these are realities that have really shaped our choices in the last 5-10 years, and we are dealing with these challenges in our everyday lives. So it's impossible for us to separate ourselves from it and say, oh, these are things that are not happening. The third area, of course, I touched upon air pollution, but I also want to touch upon the fact that, health is so integral to our well-being, our ability to work, to be able to achieve the full potential of our being, that the debilitating, health situation with the fact that plastics have entered placental tissue, they've entered the bloodstream of babies, they've entered our lungs, even testicles. When I read that report, I said, okay, maybe this will make people sit up and take a little more cognizance of this fact. But these are realities that are, pushing us into at least at some level feeling, what can I do to bring change? How can my individual choices and action propel some change? And I think that as actors, we have this incredible platform and opportunity to engage with so many people. And as we learn and as we feel the debilitating impacts of the realities that we are confronted by every day, and we explore the solutions, and we question and we ask for the answers that we require, and partner with people who are actually making such big strides in bringing about change, we can foster the culture that we hope that will create a world that will achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So I take great pride to represent a small but growing community of artists that take the necessary steps in building the partnerships that are required, in advocating for the changes that are necessary to achieve a healthy planet for all people everywhere. I want to pick up on just one issue and just speak about the intersectionality of climate change and how it impacts women and gender and education. I grew up seeing images of women in rural India and in marginalized sections of society carrying the weight of pots, women and girls on their heads, walking long distances to collect fresh water for their homes. How many of you have seen these images growing up? How many of you have seen these women and young girls do this every day? Now, with climate changing the way it is and the extreme weather events that are playing havoc, there is naturally a huge deficit for natural fresh water. And the number of women who are being pushed into this activity is growing. And that takes them away from many things. They spend long hours walking long distances, of course carrying the burden of the weight of the water, but they're carrying a far bigger burden, which is the weight of the time that is stolen from their daily lives to be with their families, to educate themselves, and to earn a livelihood. 150 days total is what women and young girls spend just to collect fresh water out of 365 days. Now, this is what underscores the intersectionality of climate change and all of the other goals that we're looking at achieving. India, as we know, ranks 109 out of 167 countries on the SDGs index. And the people who spoke with me before highlighted how 1 in 4 young people in the world are Indian, and how we are the world's youngest population, and how we have such incredible representation of youth who are really taking cognizance of this fact and taking big strides. But I think it's equally important to share that there are many young people who still remain unheard, whose voices need to be given platforms across caste and across all regions. And it's equally important to understand that the SDGs are not some abstract roadmap that exist only for the rooms that the United Nations brings us together in, or government agencies bring us together in. The SDGs are something that every individual can adopt and can be the guiding principles of how we build our businesses, how we produce, how we manufacture, how we deliver our goods to people, how we live our lives every day. And I truly believe that every one of the fellows in this room is a great example of how that is possible. And I hope to learn from you and continue to share what I learn. And I hope that my choices every day help you discover that the SDGs are personal. And together, we shall achieve them, because we have really no alternative. We can't imagine living on a dead planet. And it's impossible to dream about a future that is not healthy, that is not peaceful, and that is not equal. Thank you. Before I go away, want to share one small example. I wear this as my badge of honor because it's just one of the things that we can do at an individual level, right? I stopped using disposable water bottles 10 years ago, and I've managed to, with all my very bad math, I think, stop over 10,000 bottles, plastic bottles, from entering our waterways and our oceans and polluting our natural environment. This bottle is my traveling bottle. It goes with me wherever I go. And I always share this as an example because I feel that when 8 billion people start to make such choices we can truly see big changes possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dia Mirza. You've broken the glass ceiling for so many young advocates around the world. And as you said, the SDGs are not some disjointed, abstract idea. They are the very realities of the world that we're living in today. And we need to and we ought to break those silos and continue working together. And as fellows and young people in this room, I can surely say that you have inspired us all. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Let's give a huge round of applause. Let's feel the energy. So, to increase the energy of this room, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next segment, a rich discussion led by Next Generation India Fellow Lead, Prachi Shivgaonkar, on Young India's role in shaping the next agenda. This discussion will navigate the uniquely diverse Indian landscape, understanding young India's priorities and ambitions in shaping the global consensus on the post-2030 framework. It will also discuss key points across India's 2047 priorities, including economic prosperity, social advancement, sustainability, and effective governance. I now invite our moderator for the panel discussion, Next Generation India Fellow Lead, Prachi, to the stage, and our esteemed panel to join Ms. Dia Mirza on the stage for an invigorating discussion.
Hi, everybody. Yes, yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for coming here today. And I want to start this panel by discussing why we are here in the first place. We are here because of a simple question. What do the dreams of young India look like? As Next Generation India Fellows, this is a question we found ourselves asking again and again. And to find the answer, in our action group Planet, we are building a platform where young leaders can send letters to current leaders about our hopes, ideas, and dreams for the future. And very interestingly, in these letters, we found that the dreams of young Indians coincide with the dreams of a young India. As a young country, we are a nation of hope and possibility, where big dreams can be dreamt and realized. With more than half of our population under the age of 30, Indian youth are in a unique and powerful position to influence the future. We just need to be made aware of our power. And in our vision for a Vikasit Bharat by 2047, the biggest asset we have is the youth of our country. So we received hundreds of letters from young people of all ages. And I want to tell you about one of them today. I received this letter from a bright young boy when I visited his school at the outskirts of Pune. And it starts out like this. He says, I can't do anything right now because I'm only 13. But when I grow up, I would like to transform waste management in our city. And in my mind, his words are the reason we are here today and the reason why this panel exists. Through our conversation, I want to tell him that you're not powerless. It's good that you want to make a difference when you grow up, but you can also make a difference now. Through our conversation, I want to tell him and all the young leaders in the audience today that your ideas matter, your dreams have power, and your voice is heard. As young people, we are not just spectators. we can play an active role in shaping the future of our country. But how do we do that? That's what we are here to discuss, and we have just the right people to show us the way. So thank you so much for coming here today, and it means the world to us that you are here to support us at the very beginning of our journey as Next Generation India Fellows. I want to start with Shombi. Shombi is the United Nations Resident Coordinator for India, and he spent over 25 years working in sustainable development internationally. And before I get to your question, I promised you a fun designation for coming here, and this is your fun designation, which is that as young people, we also have another unique power in the world, which is that we decide what's cool in the world. And I have to tell you, we were at the same beach cleanup a couple of months back, and when I posted about it, my inbox was flooded with messages from young people just talking about how incredibly cool you are. So the designation we are formally giving you now is Resident Cool. And we're happy to have you here. He is, right? So, Shomi, I want to ask you, how can the United Nations support India's vision for youth engagement in achieving our roadmap to 2030? And what role can platforms like the Next Generation India Fellowship play in that?
Well, no, thank you so much, Prachi. Wow, that's usually, I mean, my title is, resident coordinator. Usually here in India, I'm called resident commissioner, which also is pretty cool. But resident cool, that's a new kind of RC. Thank you so much. I really wish my two kids were here in the room to have heard that. So
I will tell them personally.
But this is being recorded, so definitely. No, thank you so much, and really, Prachi, I mean, this is a superstar panel. So thanks absolutely to CEEW and UN Foundation and all of the Next Gen fellows here in the room for the opportunity to be here and really to join you and Richa, Shamika, and Arunaba, and of course, Dia is a real privilege. Let me start by saying Antarashtriya Yuva Divas ki Shubhkamnaएं. Happy International Youth Day to everybody. And let me really reiterate Arunaba's message about, I'm also no longer part of the youth generation, perhaps, although, clearly, I'm the only one with the gray hair. But it's a partnership, right? It's a partnership. So I always like to say that it's not just about young people, but it's also about partnership with those who are dil se young hai. So that's the spirit you said, young in spirit, right? What can the UN do? I mean, we have long understood now that it's not just tokenism saying we need to have youth engaged and hear the voice and this sort of a thing, but rather youth are already driving the agenda. So it's about how can we help ourselves and achieve the goals we want, the Sustainable Development Goals, which are absolutely personal, as Dia was saying. The only way to do that is to get the inspiration and the ideas of youth into our policy making, absolutely. So we've made this a top priority. We have, the Secretary General has a youth envoy, for example, the very first youth Undersecretary General, in fact. We've got the 2030 Agenda Strategy, Youth Strategy as well. We have a Generation Unlimited, which is the global platform to engage with young populations, and here in India it's called Yuva. And we have a goal of helping to impact the lives of 300 million young Indians here as well. We've got Tide Turners, UN Environment Program Initiative, to ensure that young people's inspirations are being really captured for the fight against the triple planetary crisis, as you mentioned as well. So across the board, private sector, appreciate very much India's prioritizing skills and job creation for the young people of India, because quite frankly, India has the greatest youth generation in history right now. More young minds to tap for solutions at exactly the moment we need solutions than any country has ever had before. So it's all about tapping this demographic dividend, providing skills and jobs and opportunities to hear from young people. And fortunately, in a way, it's never been easier for young people's voice to be heard. with social media, with internet, with all of these things, you know, a young person sitting in a living room can actually create a Jan Andolan, can create, you know, a movement. And this is really the moment that we have to all come together. So it's no longer about youth in a way as an ancillary thing, just like Leo was saying, triple planetary crisis is not some, you know, concept in the future. This is the here and the now and what we're very much focused on. Thank you.
Absolutely. Amazing. I want to turn to Dr. Shamika Ravi. She's on the Economic Advisory Board of the Prime Minister, and she's also the Secretary of India. Most importantly, I have to tell you, in the impact space, I keep meeting young people who've been students of yours, and they talk about how you inspired them to take up careers in the impact space. I want to know give me a show of hands, who is in this audience is below the age of 35? How many young people do we have today? Okay, so it's an audience filled with young people. All of you, you're also allowed to raise your hands. You're young at heart. Give me a show of hands, how many of you want to make a difference through your careers? Good. So we have a lot of eager faces in the audience who want to make a difference for the future of our country. How can we become involved in India's vision for a Vikasit Bharat?
Thank you. That was a very easy question. No, I'm kidding. Well, I'll give you a personal anecdote, and then I'll give you some data. Let's start with the data. That globally, youth inactivity is higher than ever historically, which means inactivity is really a euphemism for saying you're waiting for the right thing to do, right? Of course, economists, we just bundle it all together and we say it's unemployment. But there is something very curious happening in India, as it has happened in China as well, but these are two populous countries, so a lot of these data stand out in these parts. That up till the age of 29, from 18 to 29, for the most educated segment of society, which means you've been to college and above, the unemployment or the inactivity rate is at least 6 times as high as for people above the age of 30 and above. Now, what is it that happens around 30 that all this waiting and the right thing to do begins to weigh down, and then you settle into some productive, marketable activity? This is where matching expectations and aspirations and you wanting to do things, you wanting to contribute, wanting to do something different. Because one, historically it has never happened that we've had the wherewithal to actually do it. We do have, our tummies are full, we are not dying of hunger anymore for the first time. India actually has absolute poverty below 3%. It has never happened before. We are now looking for something more in life, which is why the educated segment is willing to wait up till a certain age to then settle down. And of course, your elders want you to settle down. But the joke is also that, you know, when we were in college, Arunabha and me, and I presume Dia, you know, the cool kids had guitars and they had bands. Today, the cool kids have startups. They have ideas that they want to experiment with. They know how to network and get the financing. They know where the incubators are. That's a big difference between what was the scene even 25, 30 years back, right? So there is a difference in terms of just expectations, aspirations, and I would say because of technology, tremendous amount of knowledge as well. You do know a lot more than perhaps we did. Now, personally, let me tell you, when you say, how do you contribute? You know, in the beginning of the pandemic, when we were all holed up in our homes and really wondering whether the world was indeed coming to an end, in India, we did not have regular statistics on how things were looking. And we were all worried. We were looking at the kind of predictions that, you know, 50 lakh people would perish. We would have hundreds of millions of infections. Average length of stay in hospitals would increase. And at a time like that, let me tell you, as a complete private citizen, right? I'm sitting in the house like everybody else. I was at that time associated with the Brookings Institution It's one of the world's largest think tanks. My only tool, which each of us in the room is getting trained as a specialist in something, is data analytics. Right? I have a PhD in economics. I look at data. So I'm sitting at my table, and I'm wondering how do I do and what do I make of the situation? Purely for personal reasons, I started just analyzing data. I started calling up AIMS and calling up ICMR. I started haranguing Ministry of Health. I started calling and piecing together a picture of what might be in terms of what empirically the data tells us. And soon it became a daily exercise. We were coding, we were running 2 hours of code, and then actually what takes a considerable amount of time, which we are not very well trained at, communicating it to people. So we knew the statistics, but then putting it out on Twitter, which is also a medium which our generation, I think, has now warmed up to, but Instagram and all are still a... But communicating that with the next generation was very important. And we made that effort. It took us a couple of more hours. The analysis was 1 hour. The communication in tweets usually took 2 hours because you were making... I cannot tell you how fulfilling an exercise that was. Because soon we started, in fact, we got calls from almost every newspaper and media house in the country. Every, regardless of whether you are left-leaning, right-leaning, you love Modi, you hate Modi, they were all calling up to figure out what is happening with the pandemic. And then we started to get calls from most of our ministries and from research institutions, etc. I think each of us have it in us to use the tools that we possess to contribute in whatever little way, because you can't put a ceiling to what impact it's going to have. If you do it to the best of your ability, and you soon find partners. Lots of WhatsApp group and task forces were set up. Nothing legit, by the way. It was not sanctioned by government, or we just did it because we felt it was required. So you had researchers group, you had doctors group, public health specialists, operations research specialists, all just getting onto WhatsApp. I think each of us can contribute, therefore. Right? And another small piece of sort of evidence, I joined the government for the first time in my life. I've never been a government employee. At the age of 47, as a government, the Secretary to Government of India. I might be one of the youngest secretaries to Government of India ever. And that just tells you, of course, for you, we are not youth, but it tells you that somewhere the clouds are parting and there is interest in what younger people and experts have to say. So I think sky's the limit.
Absolutely. And you are also on Instagram.
Dormant.
So were you two the cool kids when you were in college? Or
Not again?
were you two the cool kids when you were in college?
Like you know, I was the president of Economic Association. So it was still economics. I'm terrible at music. But all of that is cool. I think economics is very cool, guys.
Absolutely. And in our generation, you would have been for sure. So now I want to turn to Arunabha. He's the founder, CEO of Council on Energy, Environment and Water. He's the reason I'm here today, and in a way why all of us are here today. He's been a mentor to many of us, and he's creating ecosystems that enable us to make a difference. I remember when, as a young student, I first started hearing a lot about climate change. It seemed like this larger-than-life issue. I went to my father and asked him, what can an ordinary girl like me do about a big problem like climate change? And this is the same question I hear again and again from young people. It seems like this big issue beyond our control. So young people today who want to do something about climate change, what can we do?
Yeah, better. Thank you, Prachi, and so exciting to be on this panel with all of you rock stars. Resident Cool is perhaps the takeaway message for the day. But Prachi, I used to be in my school band.
And, I can give it to you also.
All my bandmates are now professional rock stars. So I was the least cool of them all. So hence I run a think tank now. So I think what the question you have posed is I would flip it around. It's not about what can a young person do to deal with such a complex issue. The problem is the issue is of course complex, but we've not broken it down into agency. So again, in my anniversary letter to the team yesterday, I said, we've got to get familiar or comfortable with non-linearity. What I mean by this is that when we think about climate change, the past is no longer a predictor of the future, right? So you can analyze data, as Shamika is saying, for the last 50 years, and you'll know how bad things have gotten, and yet that is not a predictor of how bad things will get, right? Equally in the opportunity side, right? There are step changes in our economic paradigms, in our life chances, as Shamika was reflecting, what a college student would be doing 25 years ago versus now. But there's another dimension to this. And that, the linear way of thinking, is that the problem is so complex that we've got to gather in halls like this, wear a suit, and debate into midnight for commas and full stops in a negotiation document, and then hope that those 2 weeks of negotiations will translate into 50 weeks of action. Right? This is the paradigm that we've inherited. I was in grade 9 when the Rio Conventions were signed. I still remember making a school chart about this, and I still remember using the phrase, Rio Conventions, pipe dream, question mark. Something in this 14-year-old head was also that this can't be the way. So the non-linearity is, why don't we focus on 50 weeks of action to influence 2 weeks of negotiations rather than the other way around? Therefore, what you do with your startup on mapping personal footprint, or someone does with a satellite-based startup which is looking at better calculations of emissions, or someone is looking at the circular economy of water so that you're reducing both the energy required in pumping water, but you're also extracting the minerals and increasing the fertilizer output, etc. Or someone looking at the distributed energy systems so that you're not, again, looking at a linear way of someone's generating power, someone's transmitting it, and someone is just passively using it. In every aspect of our economic life as economic agents, we've got to get familiar and comfortable with non-linearity. And that's when we begin to internalize the challenges we are facing, but also begin to understand that there are opportunities that might not be written down, but it's certainly something that you can come up with. So just as some examples, right? I mentioned earlier our team of just under 330 people, a median age of 29.72, right? For 14 years we maintained this. But let me go back 10 years ago. One of my now senior colleagues joined as an intern in January 2014. I gave her a homework. I said, you know, I don't understand the solar irrigation business. Why don't you do some work on it? And she worked, and we looked at the data, looked at the electricity subsidy rates state by state, and then came up with a model on how you can actually have solar irrigation in a manner that actually saves states and their distribution companies the revenue. Research that eventually informed the world's largest solar irrigation program. Right? Another young colleague then mapped out every single district on 20 parameters on where you'll get best return on investment. Another colleague went around looking at, you know, along with me, I was still young then, in rural India, mapping out, you know, where are the distributed energy companies delivering services. The point that Shamika said, right, even if you're locked in and locked down, you have the power and the agency to get comfortable. The pandemic was a non-linear event. And Shamika grabbed that and converted it into something that she could contribute. So I don't think we should be cherry-picking technologies or finance models or business models. We should simply be saying 50 weeks of action will define 2 weeks of negotiation, not the other way around.
Absolutely. And now with 5+ years in this space, this is what I experience, and this is what I learn through every conversation with you also, that sometimes change is sudden and fast-paced and passionate, but more often than not, change requires patience and it's boring. But it's through conversations like this that slowly change takes place. And we have to see the clip of you in a band to formally give you the title. I look forward to that. I now want to move to Dia. Dia is, you're a lot of things. She's a climate, she's a climate champion. She's a UN Secretary General's advocate for Sustainable Development Goals. She's one of the 100 most influential women, influential and inspiring women as named by BBC. A lot of things. But most importantly, I have to tell you, in all the people who've interacted with you, this is what I found in common. All of them talked about how kind and warm you are as a person. And I think that's what matters the most. Earlier today, when we were talking about the future of India, you said you're excited to be alive in these times. But that is true if we make it through the pollution. So we have a long and difficult journey ahead of us to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. But again, it sounds so complex, and a lot of people believe it's for leaders and policymakers and scientists to take up. But we believe that any big transformation requires ordinary citizens to come in and participate. So how can we make these things relatable to the common man? How can we utilize media to get more and more young people to think about how they can contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals?
Thank you, Prachi. I'm, so excited because I've met so many of these fellows before and shared such energizing, wonderful moments with them, including you, Prachi. So I think some of what I said in my opening remarks have covered the answer. So I'll try and focus on the areas that I didn't speak about or touch upon. I recently met a professor who, seeked me out and he said, I want to come and see you because I'm focused on behavioral science and I want to explore the possibility of how we can use the power of storytelling to bring about behavioral change, to create more champions for climate action. And I was like, you are the man. we have to meet. And I'm very, and so we met. And the outcome of that is going to be an entire, list of stories that we hope to tell. And these stories will be guided by the science to help us make storytelling that much more impactful and result in tangible change. I think the most complex and difficult thing to change is human behavior. And in so many parts of the country and the world, there is the unfortunate issue of the fact that there is one part of people who are ignorant to issues and are also ignorant towards solutions, so they don't know how to cope with or even respond to the challenges they're dealing with every day because they are just so deeply engaged in survival on a day-to-day basis. So they don't have the privilege of time or the privilege of access or the privilege or the benefit of that information that can help them engage and use their agency. Many of them go through the motions of life without even discovering that they have agency. So when we are communicating, and as communicators, I think it's so important for us to first recognize our privilege. We are so fortunate to be occupying spaces and living in these spaces that give us access to the information that we have, and therefore it is our responsibility to respond to that privilege and say, I have to make good on this. This is not just something that I have received because I've worked hard. It's something beyond that. And it is what makes who I am and my existence in this world more meaningful, because I have to use those tools, whatever I have, to bring wider change. And I want to tap into what Shamika said and what Arunabha said, because I think this panel is an example of people who are a part of civil society, who've got different skill sets, but are tied in with this understanding that we are citizens of this planet and our existence and our life is connected with the lives of everyone else, and what we do and do not do impacts everyone. And I'm going to try and simplify this a little more and say, I'm a mother of a 3-year-old child, and his first word was not mama or papa or ma or pa, it was tiger. And one of the first few things that I taught him was gratitude. So after every meal he says, thank you farmer, thank you Mama Earth. After his bath he says, thank you water, thank you Mama Earth. Now, these may seem or sound like just something a child says, but I do believe in the power of how these words will eventually help him recognize that his life, his livelihood, his existence is tied into the earth and those that work with the earth every day. And that he develops the ability to respect all resources and not be wasteful. And then that understanding makes him a more conscious consumer. And eventually, if he chooses to produce something, whatever that may be, it's something that benefits all life on earth.
Amazing, wow. Raising grateful and conscious consumers. That is so powerful. I want to now turn to my future best friend. We met today. Because we met today. We're getting there.
We've met before, so.
We're current best friends. So Richa is a UN Young Leader for Sustainable Development Goals. She is extremely cool also. She's the founder of Labhya Foundation, and she's very interestingly a teacher turned entrepreneur. And I always like to, this is what I keep noticing, okay? 16 is the magic number in the impact space. You know, all young people who are doing something remarkable start at the age of 16. I unfortunately started at 18. So but ever since I met you, I've been so excited to ask you about your journey, but we've been saving it for the panel. So now tell me finally, tell us all about why you do what you do, how you started, what you do, and let us be inspired.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Prachi. And thank you, everyone. I've actually successfully forgotten everything I had to say today because I was so engaged with what everyone had to share. But first and foremost, really grateful to you, to everyone here, to CEEW, to the UN Foundation for having us and having a young person like me here today. As an educator, I'm extremely grateful that we have a space on the table. But I can quickly start with an anecdote and then with some data. So I'm a teacher turned entrepreneur. I started teaching in low-income communities when I was 16 and did that for about a decade. And I think slowly into my journey, you know, learned many, many lessons, have so many incredible stories to tell. But I think the primary lesson I learned from being an educator in those classrooms was that there's a big difference between me teaching and children actually learning. And part of it could have been because I was a terrible teacher. But I think a more serious problem that I saw was that the kind of adversity that my children, my students came from, it was incredibly tough for them to be in the classroom and still be able to learn. And just being regulated enough to be okay to listen and understand and learn and assimilate what was happening in a high engaging classroom even was extremely difficult for so many of my children. And I think I started exploring that over the years, and I think a big turning point for me was, unfortunately in my journey, I lost two of my children, lost two of my students. And one of them was to community violence, another one was to a disease that I had recovered from when I was a child. And I think beyond how it affected me, I saw how the rest of my 48 children in the classroom dealt with it. These are 11, 12-year-old children who are only supposed to care about their next meal or who they want to play with and, what they're going to do after school. But here they were trying to process the fact that they will never see their best friends ever again. And then I saw how it impacted their parents, the community that I served in. And it seemed like to the outside world, nothing really mattered. Like my children's names never came out, nothing of that sort, and mainly because of where they came from. And I think that really made me question my purpose. It made me question why education and what is the true purpose of education. And in that journey, I fortunately met with my co-founders, Vedant and Mallika, who then pushed us to start what is now Labhya. And the whole point of Labhya is to build a movement for children's mental health and well-being. And so essentially what we recognized is that most of the children who go to public schools or government schools in India who come from really low income backgrounds, who come from vulnerable backgrounds, don't have the skills to build or don't have the resilience to be able to cope with where they are in the cycle of poverty and adversity and hence become effective learners. So how can we help children bridge that gap? How can children be regulated enough to then start learning? And so at Labhya, we partner with Indian state governments to help them institutionalize well-being and mental health programs across government schools of the state mandatorily through a daily class that then goes on to impact children's resilience, their ability to build strong relationship skills, their ability to feel motivated to learn. So far, we do this with 2.4 million children across 22,000 government schools in partnership with 3 state governments, with a hope that we will be... Thank you. But we have a long way to go. Our goal is 30 million children by 2030, and I will not stop till we get there. I think that's been my journey, but I think the most important thing as a young entrepreneur I've learned in this journey is, like you were sharing, just take action. Don't wait for anything to happen for you. And the second is to not be afraid to engage with the public systems as a young person. And I know one of the Next Gen fellows was sharing right before this that in most of the spaces you were, I don't know where you are, you were the youngest, yes, you were the youngest person in the room, and I completely empathize with that. It can be very daunting. I remember wearing fake specs. These are real, but I used to wear fake specs and saris and, trying to be to pretend like I'm serious enough to be in the business. I'm serious enough to tell you what's the right thing to do in this situation. But I hope that more young people are able to adapt in those situations and really still engage with the system where you can feel powerless many, many times, but know that your voice really matters. And more than your voice, your action, your intention, and your seriousness is the most important thing in the work that you do.
Amazing. Wow. Richa, I was about to go shop for fake specs also, but but you showed us today that they are not required. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much, all of you. It's been such an insightful, endearing panel, and with this, you become officially our godparents for the Next Generation India Fellowship. And now you're official. And all of you become a part of the Next Generation India movement as well, because we are more than a fellowship. We are an idea, a vision, and a movement. We are working with the mission that young people should not just be spectators, but should play an active role in shaping the future of our country. And the minute you start believing in this mission, you become a part of the Next Generation India Fellows. So thank you so much for coming here today. And as we wrap up this panel, we only have one thing to share with you and one thing to ask from you. We ask all of you that you believe. You believe in the power of your words. You believe in the power of your dreams, and you believe in the power of your action. And we share with you a vision for the world, a vision where each one of us is a change maker. Let's build that world together. Thank you so much.
I am sure our audience is as energized as I am with this panel. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. We deeply appreciate your time and expertise. But I will not let you go so soon. We ask you to please stay on the stage, and I also request our speaker for the next segment, Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma, and the Next Generation India Fellow to join our esteemed panelists on the stage for a group photograph. So all of the Next Generation India Fellows and Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma, so please join us. Yes. Thank you so much, everyone. I now request Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma and the Next Generation India Fellow for Innovation and founder and CEO of Pixel, Awais Ahmed, to continue to be on the stage for our next segment. As space diplomacy and governance become increasingly central to nation and global conversation, India's role in the cosmos is expanding beyond its historic milestones. With advancements in indigenous satellite technology, ambitious missions like Gaganyaan, and a burgeoning private space sector, India is not only contributing to scientific knowledge, but also asserting its influence in the space governance frameworks. Our next segment, led by our very own Innovation Fellow and founder and CEO of Pixel Space, Awais Ahmed, is an intergenerational fireside chat featuring Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma, the first Indian in space. This discussion will explore India's role in the evolving space landscape as well as the future of space governance, and will share insights on what it takes to reach for the stars and the moon, perhaps. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for being here, Wing Commander Sharma. We go a few years back, just for the audience here. The first time that we interacted was in Bangalore when you came to see the work that we were doing on the Hyperloop India pod under a metro station there. And then post that, we also got to share a cab ride from New Delhi to Pilani in Rajasthan, where he was gracious enough to come and inspire the students there. So thank you for coming here for an even younger set of folks that are here. Right, so as was introduced, I'm Awais Ahmed, the founder and CEO of Pixel Space Technologies, and also the Next Generation Fellow for Innovation. But the guest here doesn't really need an introduction, but I'll try to give a little bit of a background on how sort of it has been, right? So in 1984, I believe you made history by becoming the first Indian to ever venture to space. The last panel, we talked about a lot of problems plaguing our planet. In this panel, we will go beyond that to space and hopefully also tie that back into how it is still important for the future of Earth itself. Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma, decorated Indian Air Force pilot and astronaut, not only represented India in the vast expanse of space, but also showed us that the sky is not just the limit, it's just the beginning. His extraordinary mission aboard the Soviet spacecraft Soyuz T-11 showcased India's capabilities and inspiration on a global stage, and inspired generations to look beyond the ordinary and aspire for the extraordinary. His iconic words, "Sare jahan se acha," spoken from space after looking at India, continue to fill every Indian heart with pride and a renewed sense of possibility. And so, of course, today we are incredibly fortunate to hear from someone whose journey from the blue skies of our planet to the infinite blackness of space exemplifies the heights that human spirit and innovation can reach. Right, so without further ado, we can just dive into the discussion. So, of course, over the past few decades, since you went up to space, India has grown leaps and bounds in terms of our space technology and the missions, whether that was Chandrayaan-1 in 2008 that had signs of water on the moon, whether that was Mangalyaan that went to Mars for less money than it cost to make the movie Martian, or very recently Chandrayaan-3 that was the first lander to ever land on the south pole of the moon, right? So a lot of things have reflected India's growing expertise. So how have you, from your personal standpoint, seen India grow from 1984 with regards to space and technology, and sort of where do you think we are with sort of that? So I would love to know your perspective of how that growth has been.
Thank you very much, Awais. I'm so happy to be here, especially on the stage with an audience like this, which really is the future of our country, our great country. And I'm quite confident that our great country is going to become a world leader very shortly. Thanks for this opportunity. You've drawn the line at 1984 as far as India's space program is concerned, but if we turn back the pages of history, especially of ISRO, I would like to recall that iconic snapshot when ISRO, at that time INCOSPAR, was launching the first Nike Apache rocket for scientific purposes, essentially to study how sodium vapor behaves in the upper atmosphere. And the nose cone of that rocket was being carted to the launch site on a cycle. So those were very modest beginnings, and I think we were very, very fortunate at that time for this program to be led by a visionary like Vikram Sarabhai. Quite frankly, we had no business to be in the space business, given the fact that we had just got our independence. We were developing economy, and this space was considered a luxury of very developed nations at that time. But the focus that was provided and the vision that was provided by these visionaries like Satish Dhawan and Sarabhai was that even for a developing country, space could be leveraged for the greater benefit of our own economy and through our economy for our people. And which is why their sole focus at that time was
applications technology and satellite building. And in fact, just as an aside, when Soviet Union offered the space flight to India at that time, ISRO wasn't interested at all. It was offered first to ISRO. And ISRO said, listen, we don't want to lose focus. We've been given a job. We are trying to translate the vision as laid down by Vikram Sarabhai. So therefore, a manned space program is not on our mental horizon just yet. So thank you, which was fortuitous as far as I'm concerned, because Mrs. Gandhi then offered the flight to the Indian Air Force, and Indian Air Force had the good sense to grab it. And that's how I got a chance to go up into space. And I must say that it was the ride of a lifetime. And let me put another thought straight. I've always been credited ever since for that line, which actually was borrowed from Muhammad Iqbal's beautiful poem of Sare Jahan Se Acha. And I would urge all the youngsters to read and go beyond that line, go beyond the first paragraph, which is always sung, and see how meaningful that has been. So really speaking, that has been the background. And you've mentioned the wonderful strides that ISRO has made ever since, starting from satellite launch vehicle to the ASLV, the ups and the downs, as usually happens in groundbreaking stuff in science. There are some failures on the way, and ASLV itself earned the moniker always sea-loving vehicle because it would end up in the drink. But not to be fazed, ISRO just got up and got to work again and done a wonderful job indeed on two levels, while it kept increasing its tech as far as launching capability is concerned. On the one hand, it was also becoming extremely proficient in building satellites, and the data was being used, as you well know, made to work for our economy. So that is how, and science was also followed very closely, which is why Chandrayaan happened. Always success with the very first shot. Mangalyaan happened, and as you rightly said, it costed much lesser than what you do for making a movie. In fact, I think some folks, or was it the Prime Minister who said that if you calculate the per kilometer cost, it's cheaper than an auto rickshaw. Yes, yes. So ISRO's has been an extremely wonderful story, worth emulating, and I think a very deserving company, a public sector company with a totally different work culture, transparency, and that's the way to go. And I have no doubt that in the coming years, ISRO is going to continue overreaching and doing a fabulous job for our country. And talking about our country, ours is not a small country. What happens to India has to affect the world. And therefore, what we do here, it's extremely important, and it's going to decide the trajectory of our home planet. Sorry for this long.
No. Thank you for that, right? So I think when you look at the US, when you look at Europe, who have spent a whole lot of money and their budgets are higher, you can make a case as a developed nation, they don't have as many people starving or below poverty line. For a country like India, especially given we started early, of course, I am biased as a space entrepreneur as to why space is important. But there's always a question in lots of people's minds. So many problems plaguing our planet, so much money that can be devoted to that. Why is space exploration important? How can it actually benefit the Earth, right, for our youth? What is your perspective as to why a country like India that has invested so much in space should continue to do that and not only follow that, but also continue to lead in the years to come?
Yeah. This is the eternal question, and I think that is a worm's eye view, primarily because everybody, and this is a human, I would call it a failing. You judge everything based on what's in it for me. But it's not only what's in it for me. I think the way, in every other facet of life, we are busy getting more and more money, whether as an investor you want a better return. So if you measure space activity and its cost on a return of investment parameter, I think the answer is very, very clear. At least the way the Indian space program has drawn a line for itself. We are not in competition with anybody else. We are not, geopolitical constraints are not driving our space program. The only thing that's driving our space program is what's good for our people. And and since we have already proven that, manned space program is the next logical step. But taking off from there, if you look at what ISRO has done for India, it only shows that India is capable of doing for the region around. And once we do that, the ripple effect is bound to become. So a local effect, and we've already talked earlier at the panel of interdependency. So the ripple effect is bound to affect the whole globe. We are interdependent on each other, and if India becomes the proof of concept of how space can be leveraged for peaceful purposes, for development, and what we do need to learn is sustainable development. Development for itself is all very good, but given the fact that we've got limited resources on our home planet, given the fact that there is no other place that can offer such a beautiful environment to live in, till as far as the Hubble or the James Webb telescope can see, more the reason that we protect our home planet. And the only way we would be able to do that is to have sustainable development practices.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense, right? Whether that's GPS that we all use on our maps to get here, or whether knowing whether there's going to be, heavy rainfall. We have seen what has happened with the landslides in Wayanad. All of that possible through satellites in space. And when Apple satellite was launched, bringing connectivity to those rural young schools so that the kids could actually see these educational programs, I think the impact might not be directly, tangibly visible at that point in time, but sort of really helps, right? In the last few years, we have seen a whole lot of development in space, not only in India, globally, whether that's, for example, the ASAT tests that have led to increase in debris up there, or mega constellations, people wanting to launch not only a few hundreds of satellites now, not only a few thousands, but tens of thousands of satellites. Space governance will become, and space diplomacy will start to become a very important factor, right? How do you see the future of space governance coming on globally? What should we as youngsters do there? What role does India and its youth have to play in making sure that space also is sustainable, as you mentioned, especially as all of these developments and there's a grab to go out and a rush to go out and grab as much as we can. How does the future of space governance look like? Where does India and its youth play a part in that?
Well, I think you've touched upon an extremely important point of space governance. And I say important, and I must also admit that I'm not very gung-ho on this. I have my doubts, primarily because it is in conflict with the way we run our lives, with the way the economic model we are using to establish what is success. We feel that success is quarter-on-quarter growth, but it shouldn't end there. We have to also find out what is quarter-on-quarter growth costing us collectively, given all that we have spoken about earlier, about resources being finite. And you cannot go endlessly quarter-on-quarter growth. You cannot produce anything from when nothing is left. So So we are going to expend the resources and make this whole place inhabitable. So rather than build a far-off hell in our celestial neighborhood, I think it's time we rebuilt heaven back here on earth, which we have steadily destroyed these last few years. So I think that has become very important, and this is where space governance is going to clash with nations who want to lead, and they want to lead using the existing paradigm, whereas the time has come to adopt. This is the very first time that humanity is faced with an opportunity. It is now getting ready to leave its cradle and go and colonize the moon. Now, but if we do not fix our methodology of living sustainably on Earth, then we are going to go and ruin another planet. In fact, just to point out the Artemis Accord, which India has signed, Russia and China have not signed it yet. And America has signed it primarily because they want to ensure that the mining and all which is going to be done is going to be in contradiction of the United Nations vision that space belongs to everybody, that all the resources which we get from outer space is for the benefit of all. So I'm only hoping that having signed the Artemis Accord, India's cultural ethos, which believes that the world is one family, that cultural ethos will converge with the United Nations vision that space belongs to all humanity. Let's hope that that happens, but I have my doubts, primarily because the governance through the United Nations thus far has not been very effective. And that is what worries me. And that is where, when private companies get into the act, how are private companies going to handle this, that they do the work and what comes out of there has to be distributed equitably. It's something which we need to work on, and maybe the model will come out of this audience who recognize that this has to be done, otherwise we are down a slippery slope. So that's the challenge which needs to be worked on, and that is my fear. You talked about the number of satellites. Yes, that's the other bit. There's so much of space debris that is surrounding our planet that future launches are going to be jeopardized, and these are accidents waiting to happen. So we need urgent action in that area as well, which is back to governance and space law.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more there. And while the future picture might seem bleak, I mean, obviously the fact that we're discussing these problems before a big mishap happens is a good step in that direction, so that they don't happen, right? These issues, when you're talking about sending stuff into space or mining stuff in space or looking at space governance structures, might seem a little far off or indirect to a lot of youth that are studying in schools or colleges today, right? What would you give in terms of advice or suggestions to the youth, that how can they get involved, not only with regards to space, but with regards to science and technology? What can youth in a school today be doing to make sure that their voice is being heard, or their impact can be magnified in the years and decades to come, so that that voice can also be heard?
Again, going back to our cultural roots, over centuries, we've been taught that being a patriarchal society, that what the bada parents say, that's the real thing. Yes, but I think those respecting a family unit within the family unit is one thing. But when you are coming out of the family unit and you are interacting with the environment around you, which has the potential to affect everybody's lives, I think there you need to make a difference. There you need to have a voice, even if it is contrarian to what is the norm. You must be vocal about it. But if you keep waiting, for things to happen, then that is the attitude which has brought our the population, global population, to where we are today. We are facing crisis after crisis, whether it's violence, politically, geopolitically, or whether it's climate change or environmental degradation. They're all, of course, related. So these are the aspects which we really need to recognize and then act upon. So make your thoughts known in the best possible way. No, it's not necessary to always take the activism route. There are other more convincing ways. And now that you've been given the opportunity to influence policy, that's the heft you need. The door is being opened for you. Just make sure that you contribute after thinking through, and don't do science for the sake of doing science. Think about the end result. After all, we've even experienced those bits. Science has split the atom, and we've gone and made atomic weapons. Pharma, you discovered penicillin, and now today big pharma is running our lives all because of money and creating more chaos. So these are the things which you must think about and try and roll back all the wrong decisions which have been taken by my generation and generations which have been in the past. So cumulatively, you're facing the problems of the lack of oversight on our part. So I think you have a very steep slope to climb. Wish you all the best.
Thank you for that. I think that will inspire a lot of folks here. Turning into your own experiences for a short while here, right? You mentioned taking off in that rocket was one of the probably the most exhilarating experience of your life.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a quote. A rocket is basically a bomb, but with controlled explosions, right? And you have to be a little bit crazy to be sitting on top of a bomb that could easily go wrong and sort of take off in that with vibrations and things. And for preparing to go up to space, I believe you have to go to Star City in Russia and make sure you're going through rigorous trainings, even learn Russian, do various simulations, and probably, I'm not sure, go in a centrifuge where you had to experience very high G-forces. And for folks that don't know, basically is a large version of a centrifuge where a person is put in there and rotated really fast to see the same G-forces they would see when they're taking off. That probably, those intense conditions and the training gives you a very unique perspective, unlike most others, right? And a lot of folks here have leadership aspirations in terms of various different things that they want to do. So if you can talk to us about how that experience was in terms of when you got to know that you have to go to space, to actually getting to go to space, and what did you learn there that could sort of help young leaders grow to become better leaders in the future?
Okay, so how do I go? What do I say? Let's go back to some definitions. For the youngsters who are at the cusp of starting their careers, I would urge you to revisit the definition of success in your own minds. What is success? If to you success means getting a hefty pay packet, success, and if the aspiration is that you must climb the corporate ladder, get a corner office and the latest set of wheels, then your life choices have to be totally different. But if you feel that success is to realize your own potential in the area which you are passionate about, not because everybody is doing something and going in forming a line to the most well-paying job, well, then you're one of a crowd. But try to focus on what is your passion, and then try to achieve your potential in that line. When you do that, you will find that you are a lot more, well, like I said, revisit the definition of success. You'll be a lot more fulfilled, and you will contribute much more than your counterpart who's taken the other road. So that is about talking about leadership. Everybody talks about leadership, but nobody talks about followership. See, followership, you can't have good leaders if your team is not good enough. So when you have been given a task, and if you're not in at the top of the pyramid in the hierarchy, then your job is to speak your mind, give your opinion, but don't, again, like I had mentioned earlier, don't be an activist. You've done your job well after thinking through, excuse me, and you've given your opinion. After that, it's the leader's call. So that's it. Be a good follower also, and that is where success will lie. And I would say always try and choose a purpose higher than yourself. Because when you do that, you will be amazed at the energy you will find to fall and get up, because things are not going to be smooth. Talking about space per se, if you knock off the glamour associated with the word space or associated with the word astronaut, do remember that it is an extremely difficult job. You're going to be facing, when you start exploration, the moon and further on to Mars, you will be working with multicultural, multinational crews. There will be social deprivation. You're cooped up in a cylinder for months on end. How are you going to interact with each other? It's not easy. Ask the guys who are coming back from Antarctica. At least in Antarctica, they can go out. Even if it is snowbound, they can walk out. But here you're cooped up inside. So there has to be mental resilience. And that's how. There's a lot of reorientation that would be required for you. And your work may not be sung at all. But when you reflect back on your life, you will be satisfied that you were working shoulder to shoulder with the best guys in the business, and you worked on cutting-edge technologies, and you were a very important contributor to the success of various missions. And I think this should satisfy. That's what a professional is, really. Professionals don't work for medals or for recognition and all.
Amazing. So I think that gives us a lot of food for thought. Thank you for that. We're nearing the end of time, so I'll end with a few rapid-fire questions for you. So, what was more thrilling, the launch or the re-entry?
The re-entry was more thrilling because I thought I won't make it. So, because that is when the parachute opens and a whole lot of sound inside which we were unprepared for, because the metallic ring chafes against the hook of the space craft, and because of its bell shape, the sound gets amplified, and inside I was convinced that the parachute is going to part company and the rest of the journey is going to be like a projectile. But that didn't happen. As you can see, I'm sitting here. As far as the launch is concerned, the difference between the shuttle and the Soviet system is that in the shuttle you could look out of the screens, but in the Russian system, the whole rocket is covered with a shroud, so there are no windows on the launch. And you don't have any visual inputs. You only have tactile and the vibrations which are coming up 13 stories from the engines, that's all you feel, and the G-forces keep increasing. And so the launch wasn't really worrisome because everything was computer controlled, and so there was no way. So one was only an interested bystander and an observer, wondering whether the guys who've written the code have got it right. That's all.
Awesome. What would be your favorite space movie?
Space movie? Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Way back, it is before Apollo 13, before Gravity, before Interstellar. Yes.
Awesome. And if you would recommend a book for every young person to read, what would be that one book that you would recommend?
Well, I think you pick up any book of Carl Sagan, and you will be really pleasantly surprised of his insight and the so-called overview effect. He personified the overview effect. I would recommend that you read Carl Sagan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you haven't already looked at it, if you Google the pale blue dot,
yeah,
you'll see a picture that the Voyager probe took just before exiting the solar system. And Earth in that picture is basically one tiny speck, right? And that personifies the fact that when you look back at it from so far away, we are all just one planet, and we have this one pale blue dot that we call our home that we need to take care of, because there's literally nothing else. Yes, we can try to go beyond space, but we only have one home.
Thank you. Yeah.
And finally, I think to sort of end this, right? If there was one phrase to describe, how your view of India was from space, what would you say?
Well, I would say Sare Jahan se acha again.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Venkamada Sharma, for making it here and giving us your thoughts. I believe the youth here will be very inspired to take this inspiration and actually go and do some action, regardless of whether that's policy or something in their personal lives. We're all grateful to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you for the privilege of having me here. Thank you.
What an incredible way to end the first half of the day. Thank you so much, Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma. We're so honored to have you here with us, and thank you for sharing your insights. And to Awais for carrying out this wonderful chat. I'm sure it has reignited the space dream for many in this room. And just like myself, you're feeling totally out of this world. Thank you. I now invite Ms. Raymond Singh, Project Leadership, Next Generation India Fellowship, and Director, Human Resources at CEEW, to deliver the vote of thanks, acknowledging the efforts of many people that have gone above and beyond to make this an incredible experience for all of us. Let's welcome Raymond.
Thanks, Anushka. So first of all, I would like to thank all of our speakers today. Special thanks to Wing Commander Colonel Rakesh Sharma, Shri Amitabh Kant, who delivered the video message, Mr. Shombi Sharp, Shamika Ravi, Diya Mirza, Richa Gupta, and of course, Dr. Arnabha Ghosh. Couple of thoughts that stood out today. In terms of, as I was listening through to all of the various sessions, there's often this quote which says that youth is wasted on the young, right? And I think one thing which the sessions from the morning till now have taught us is definitely youth is not wasted on the young. But one of the things which has come out from the intergenerational perspectives is that there is so much that the youth has to harness. There are dreamers, there are great ideas, they're great innovators. And what we're really hoping to see through this fellowship is the ability to harness all of that together to what I would call as MIH, making it happen. And that's again a dominant theme which has been going on throughout the day. Many of our panelists spoke about it, the concept of nonlinear growth, questioning things, and ultimately being able to deliver on them, being able to lead them, being able to follow through on them, and making them happen. So if there's one mantra I would give to all of the young people in the room as they go in for the very interesting breakout sessions in the second half, it would be that. As a vote of thanks, I'd like to thank both the CEOs, Ambassador Elizabeth Cousins and Dr. Arunabha Ghosh of CEEW, for the vision, for believing in the vision of the fellowship and bringing it to life. I would like to thank our 11 Next Generation India Fellows. Big shout out for you. You've been working day and night, prepping behind the scenes for many, many months to pull this off today. I'd like to thank our Future Agenda team. They may not be here in person, but they're definitely with us in spirit, both Harshani and Pele, who have been involved in this project right from its inception. I'd like to thank our outreach team, spearheaded in the able hands of Mihir, Anjuman, Ridhima, Shivani, and Alina, and all the other members who are tirelessly tweeting away, making sure we get press on social media and all of the other wonderful digital platforms. And then the people who make the magic happen, the admin and the ops team, Utsav, Nipun, Solomon, Veena, Ajit, Munna, and all the others. And our Herculean project management team led by Kunalika and Adya. Finally, I'd like to thank the audience. There would be no Youth Sabha without all of you. We know it's a Monday morning. We know that there's monsoon rains and, crazy traffic to juggle. But your spirit of participation and your being here is really what the center of this fellowship is all about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raymond, for that wonderful vote of thanks. I truly echo your sentiments and extend gratitude to the entire team that has made this possible. As we bid farewell to most of you in the audience, after lunch to move to a closed-door session where we will talk about rich discussions on how to chart a path for a better India, I ask all of you to reflect on this quote by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of young, thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. With that, I invite all of you to enjoy a very well-deserved lunch where conversations can continue to flourish and connections can be made and strengthened. I'm very excited to talk to all of you. I request our confirmed breakout session attendees to please join us back in this room after lunch. Thank you, and please enjoy your lunch, and remember to browse our consultation copies, which you will find outside and on the tables. Should you not have sufficient time, please indicate your interest in joining our future focus group discussions after. Thank you, everyone, and you can now proceed to lunch in the pre-event area. Thank you.